Picture this. You're in some, like, cute little cafe in Rome, and you end up chatting with the barista about the best local spots.
Ooh, that sounds nice.
Right. But, for a lot of us, like, trying to learn a new language can feel, uh, well, kind of impossible.
Oh, for sure. It's easy to get overwhelmed, especially with all the,
Like the grammar and stuff.
yeah, and the
Yeah.
huge amount of vocab you gotta learn.
Exactly. So that's actually why we're looking at something so simple today.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
we're going to analyze a basic English conversation.
Huh.
Yeah, it's from this YouTube channel, Chit Chat English, and it's specifically made for, like, total beginners.
Oh, cool. Cool.
Yeah.
So what are we, hoping to get out of this?
Well, I think it's amazing how much we can learn about um, about actually learning a language
Yeah.
from something as basic as this.
I'm intrigued.
Okay, so I was watching this video, right? And the thing that really jumped out at me was, well, the structure of the whole conversation. They have this constant, like, question, answer, question thing going on.
Yeah.
It's almost like a dance or something.
It is, and that's completely intentional. That structure, that repetition is, it's actually a key principle.
In learning a language.
Yeah, yeah, it's called spaced repetition. Basically, by going over the same topic, but with different questions.
Okay.
You're making those neural pathways in your brain stronger.
So it's kind of like building muscle memory, but for language.
Exactly. Instead of weights, you're lifting words.
I like that. That's good. And did you notice how they, like, sneak in little variations too?
Oh, absolutely. Within that repetition, there's a clever introduction of new vocabulary and grammar.
I didn't catch that at first.
Well, for example, the phrase "I like to," it pops up throughout the conversation, but each time
Okay.
they use a different verb or object. So it's "I like to read," then "I like to travel," "I like to cook."
Right.
You
Yeah.
see? It's a simple phrase, but so versatile. A beginner can use it in tons of situations.
That's a really good point. It's so subtle you barely notice it happening. It's like they're kind of sneaking in those.
Those foundational grammar structures.
Yeah, exactly. Like disguised as casual conversations.
Yes. Genius. Why?
Totally.
Right.
It reminds me of what do they call it? Scaffolding?
Yes, exactly. It's like giving learners just enough support to push themselves without getting overwhelmed.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And that actually brings us to another big idea in language learning.
Which is
Come on, you can't just drop a cliffhanger like that. What is it?
comprehensible input.
Comprehensible input.
Yeah, I know it sounds fancy, but it basically means the language you're exposed to.
Mm-hmm.
It should be a little bit above your current level, challenging but not frustrating.
So like that sweet spot between I totally get this and wait, what?
Precisely. And this video nails it. It strikes that perfect balance.
Okay, yeah, I can see how that would be like super important for beginners.
Absolutely. And this goes back to the vocabulary they choose. They stick to high-frequency words and phrases.
The stuff you use every day.
Right. Think about it. You're more likely to remember a word like hobby or travel because you're probably going to use them yourself.
That makes a lot of sense, yeah. But wouldn't a conversation like this, even with all these, clever techniques,
Yeah,
wouldn't it get kind of repetitive for someone trying to learn?
that's a great question. And it brings us to, another layer of why this video works so well.
Okay.
It's the topics they choose to talk about.
Let's hear it.
They cover things like, family, hobbies, travel, even dreams for the future.
Yeah.
These are topics that, almost anyone can relate to.
Yeah, for sure.
It allows for personal expression and connection, even at a beginner level.
Mhm.
It's not just about drilling words. It's about sparking genuine engagement.
That actually reminds me of when I was learning Spanish.
Yeah.
I could conjugate verbs and memorize vocab lists all day long,
Yeah.
but like actually having a conversation, I would just freeze up.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I found someone who could actually talk to me about stuff I was interested in
Uh-huh.
that I started to feel comfortable speaking. You know?
That's a perfect example of how emotions play such a huge role in learning a language.
Right.
This video, by focusing on engaging and relatable topics,
Okay.
it helps learners make those personal connections that really make the learning stick.
It's like that saying, people might forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Exactly. It's about creating a context for the language you're learning.
Okay?
It's way easier to remember the word for museum if you're having a passionate conversation about your favorite exhibits.
That's so true. So we've talked about the repetition, the vocab, the grammar.
Mhm.
What about the overall flow?
Hmm.
It felt really natural to me, not like, a textbook dialogue or anything.
That's another smart thing they do. Despite the simple language,
Okay.
the dialogue feels authentic. They use natural transitions, linking words, even some filler words like and war. It makes it sound like a real conversation.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
So they're like subtly teaching you how to actually have a conversation too.
Exactly. They're modeling not just what to say, but how to say it.
Hmm. That's a good point. It's often overlooked, but it's so important for language acquisition.
Absolutely.
So even in this like simple getting to know you conversation, there's all this like pedagogical brilliance.
Isn't it amazing? And we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more we can learn by looking at specific phrases and techniques.
Oh, I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, let's take a closer look at the part where they start talking about hobbies.
Okay.
I think you'll find it quite interesting. Okay, so remember how we were talking about comprehensible input? Well, this next part is like a perfect example of that.
Oh, all right. I'm ready.
So, so the speakers are, moving on from the introductions, and they ask each other,
Uh-huh.
"What do you like to do in your free time?"
Right. Pretty standard.
Yeah, but it's not just about the question itself. It's
It's about how they answer.
exactly. They both use this structure, like "I like to," and then a verb.
Oh, like I like to read.
Yeah, I like to watch movies, stuff like that.
Okay, so it's that repetition again.
It is, but it's more than that. It's what language experts call a sentence frame.
A sentence frame.
Yeah, it gives beginners this framework to build on.
Yeah.
Like a starting point for making their own sentences.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's like those paint by numbers kits.
Yeah.
But for language.
Yeah.
You have the outline and then
You fill it in.
exactly. And what's really cool is how they introduce new vocab within that same frame.
Right. They go from I like to read to I like to play the guitar to I like to go hiking.
So you're not just learning the structure, you're picking up new words too.
Yeah. And it's all happening naturally within this, normal conversation about hobbies.
It's like they're learning grammar and vocab and conversational flow all at the same time.
way. It's like linguistic multitasking.
I like it. But
Yeah.
okay, wouldn't this I like too
Hmm.
frame get kind of boring after a while?
That's a good point. And that's where the people who made this video, they did something really smart.
Okay.
They add variety. They ask follow-up questions. Like, one person says, I like to play video games.
Yeah.
And then the other person asks, what kind of video games do you like?
Right. So they're getting more specific, encouraging more detailed answers.
Exactly. It becomes more of a back and forth exchange.
And that introduces even more vocab and grammar, right?
Absolutely. They might start talking about different genres, their favorite characters, even like gaming news.
Wow, so it all starts with that one little phrase, I like to.
It does. It's incredible how much they pack into this seemingly simple conversation.
It really is.
And remember what we were saying about like that emotional connection being important for learning a language?
Yeah.
Well, listen to the tone, the energy when they're talking about their hobbies.
You're right. They sound more lively.
Yeah. They're smiling, using their hands. It's like you can feel their passion. Oh, totally.
And that's contagious. As a viewer, you get drawn in.
Right, which makes you pay more attention, I guess.
Exactly. It makes the language more memorable and engaging.
You know, that makes me think of when I was in Japan
Uh-huh.
trying to order ramen in this like tiny little restaurant. My Japanese was pretty bad.
I can imagine.
But the owner, he was so patient, so encouraging, and you could tell he loved his food.
Yeah.
And somehow I managed to order, and it was delicious. It was a small thing, but
But it boosted your confidence.
it did.
That's a perfect example of how, like, the emotional context of a conversation
Yeah.
can make such a huge difference.
So we've got repetition, scaffolding, emotional connection, even some cultural insights into how people talk about their hobbies.
It's amazing how much we can learn from just a few minutes of dialogue.
It really is. We've only scratched the surface, though, right? There's so much more to talk about.
Absolutely. But we'll move on to another segment.
Okay.
This one I think will really blow your mind. All right, hit me with it. What other linguistic gold have you found in this conversation?
Well, this next part might seem kind of, basic at first.
Yeah.
But there's something really interesting going on, trust me.
Okay, you've got my attention.
So towards the end, they start talking about travel, right? And one of them asks, where have you been? And the other one says, I've been to. Typical travel chit-chat, yeah.
Yeah, totally. But you wouldn't be bringing this up unless there was some, like, hidden genius here, would you?
Of course not. What's cool here is, well, how they use the present perfect tense. That I've been to.
Oh, yeah. I remember struggling with that in French. It just never seemed to, like, stick.
It can be tricky, but this video, it handles it so smoothly. They don't like explain the grammar rules or anything. They just
Mhm.
use it naturally over and over while they're talking about travel.
So they're showing you how it works instead of just telling you.
Exactly. And that's what we call implicit learning.
Implicit learning.
Yeah, the learners are kind of absorbing the grammar without even realizing it, just by hearing it used correctly in a real conversation.
Hmm. It's like when you learn to ride a bike. You don't need someone explaining all the physics behind it.
Right. You just got to do it, get a feel for it.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. But wouldn't it be better to like actually explain the grammar rule at some point?
That's a great question. And honestly, it's a debate language teachers have been having forever.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Explicit instruction versus implicit learning. There's no right answer. Some people learn better when they have the rules laid out, step by step. Others pick it up more naturally just by, being immersed in the language.
So this video is more on the implicit side.
It is. And I think that makes sense because it's for absolute beginners, right?
Yeah.
At that stage, it's more important to build confidence and fluency than to get bogged down in the technical stuff.
First you learn to walk, then you learn how your muscles and bones work together to make it happen.
Exactly. And as learners get more advanced, then they can start digging into the finer points of grammar. But this video, it does a great job laying that foundation through, that implicit learning.
Okay, so I've got the present perfect tense down,
Hmm.
at least, in practice.
Yeah.
What else is going on in this travel section?
Well, notice how they don't stop at just, where have you been?
No.
They ask things like, what did you do there? Or what was your favorite part?
Oh, right, right. Those follow-up questions, they're really important.
They are. They encourage the speaker to give more details, to like tell a story.
It's not just yes or no anymore. It's like a whole narrative.
Exactly. And that's where things get really exciting for language learning. When you're telling a story about your travels, you're tapping into your own memories, emotions.
Yeah.
And that, as we talked about before, makes it more likely you'll remember what you're learning.
It's like, how do they say it? A picture's worth 1,000 words. Maybe a story's worth 1,000 vocab words.
I love that. And it's not just about vocab. Storytelling makes you use a wider range of grammar, too. Past tenses to describe what happened, adjectives to describe places.
It really makes you flex those language muscles, huh?
It does. And it all comes back to that idea of relevance. By focusing on things people are interested in, like travel, they make the language feel real.
Yeah.
It's not just words anymore. It's a way to share your experiences, to connect with people.
And isn't that what learning a new language is all about?
Exactly. And this simple little video, it's given us a lot to think about when it comes to how we learn languages.
It really has. But it feels like we've just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore.
You're absolutely right. There is. But that's all the time we have for our deep dive today.
Well, before we go, I just want to say a huge thank you to you for sharing all your insights with us. I feel like I've learned so much.
The pleasure was all mine. And thank you to all our listeners for joining us today.
And hey, if you're feeling inspired to, start your own language learning journey, remember, start small, find something you're passionate about, don't be afraid to repeat things, and most importantly, have fun.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And pay attention to those seemingly little things, like the structure of a basic conversation. You never know what you might discover.
That's great advice. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing and those tongues wagging.